Sex with cocaine was so important because it brought added chaos. And if you've ever had chem sex or struggled with chem sex, I mean, comment down below. I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with. Alcohol brought me calmness, and it brought me almost like clarity, and cocaine brought me life, and then sex brought me the chaos. And the hard part is even when I got sober, I had cheated on my ex-wife a lot. The receptionist Casey and her cousin Brittany and a couple different saleswomen and a couple different prostitutes and porn stars. Like anyone I could sleep with, I was sleeping with whoever I could have sex with, because that was like my escape and chaos that I would create. I could hide alcohol, I could hide cocaine use. So it was almost like I had to add something else to it that was more chaos. And I needed to feel loved. I didn't realize I had anxious attachment style. And the more that Amber's in my relationship went essentially downhill, and not in her eyes, but in my eyes, I needed more validation. I needed love. And I didn't know how to find love. I didn't know how to regulate myself, any of that. And I was using all this alcohol and cocaine. And next thing you know, I wanted to feel loved too. And sex made me feel loved. And I could find people that wanted me. And it was so weird because if I could pay for it or trade for it, I never really felt like it was cheating. And I would thrive on this. I would thrive on the sneaking around. I would thrive on the hiding. And it was weird. It created dopamine in its own way. It created a high in its own way. And it became how much I could push the extents to not getting caught. I mean, there was one time I'll never forget that Amber came home from work. I was having sex with her cousin in her cousin's room. Our bedroom was here, and like the bedroom next to it down the hallway was where her cousin was staying, and we're having sex in there. And I'm literally having sex with her, and I watched my wife walk by, and she didn't stop and look in. And she went into the bathroom. And I remember I pulled up my pants and everything, and I'm high and I'm drunk, and I'm like, hey, she's like, well, where were you? I didn't see you. I lied that I was like outside. And it was like I would get off on that. I would thrive on that. I would thrive on disappearing at night. There would be nights that, she'd be asleep. I'd wake up and it was like I needed this chaos and how far to an extent I could push it. And it's weird because I never really believed too much in like sex addiction, but it does. Sex creates a ton of dopamine. If I wasn't using cocaine, if I wasn't drinking, especially at night, the sneaking around, the stress, like there was a weird high to all that. And there was a weird obsession with a lot of it. And it was like doing something I wasn't supposed to. I would have sex in the back of my truck a ton with different people. And it was so much about hiding it that it became its own high. It became its own addiction. Every day I would wake up, I would look forward and get drinking. And then it would be drugs. And then it would be, how am I going to have sex? Whether I have to find a prostitute, whether I can find somebody that I know, whatever it took for me to have sex with somebody. It was something that I didn't realize on a deeper level, that I think with a lot of addiction, it is to mask and hide a lot of trauma. But with sex, it was also to help regulate a lot of emotions and to regulate me emotionally in a lot of ways and to fill a lot of emotional needs I had that I couldn't communicate or didn't know how to, which is my fault. It's nobody else's fault. Cheating is not excusable, and it's a horrible thing to do. It's a horrible thing to hurt people that way, because it's amazing when you talk to people who cheat, how for us to cheat, we'll justify it, but then if somebody else cheated on us, it's like, oh, you horrible person, even though we've done it too. But it's its own style of addiction, and it almost soothes its own thing. And that was the strange thing for sex with me, with drugs, and even like the chem sex of drugs and alcohol really hid a lot of that trauma of losing my wife and just pain and loneliness and just depression. But sex gave me validation. It made me feel loved. It filled a lot of these other gaps that alcohol and cocaine couldn't. And so I became very obsessed with it. It allowed me something else to hyper focus on. And it was like this time fill of balancing out how much cocaine I was using or the drugs that I was doing or the drinking I was doing, because now you spend a lot of time then focused on sex and how do I get sex and who do I have sex with. And I would leave like all the time. Like on my days off, I remember my days off were always, I would never tell my ex-wife. My ex-wife, I think, only thought I had like one day off, because I always had one day that was a sex bender day. It would equal drugs and sex and drinking all day long. And I would get a hotel room, and it would usually be with Casey, the receptionist. There's a couple times it was with Mia or a few others where it was like I'd meet up with them at like 10 a.m. We'd start drinking at like 11, hotel room, and then be done at like 5 or 6. And I'd take a lot of Viagra, a lot of alcohol, kind of be blacked out almost by the time I'd get home. And it would like fill this bucket that I needed to feel loved. And I had all these side relationships, and it was amazing. Like, if you ever talked to me of how sick I was in so many different areas as an addict, that I could justify everything. I justified sex as in telling everybody how bad my relationship was and how miserable I was. And again, you know, like any normal person, like, why are you in this relationship? I was so afraid of being alone though. And my fear of being alone led me down a dark path of just constantly having sex with others, but not wanting to lose my relationship, because that was like my security blanket. And it was this chaos. Like, I liked the thought of getting caught, and I don't know why. It was this weird high that I get from it. There was times I would wake up in the middle of the night. I remember I would wake up, we'd go to bed. My ex-wife and I would go to bed usually at the same time. And there was one time I woke up and I couldn't find a lighter. And I opened up her cousin's door because her light was on. I was like, hey, you got a lighter? And she was like, and I realized she was masturbating. And her and I ended up having sex. And my ex-wife's right there sleeping. There's one time I was outside smoking. We were both outside smoking. My ex-wife was like, all right, I'm going to bed. She went to bed. I ended up having sex with her cousin out on the balcony. Like, her cousin was like my easy go-to hookup. And then I had some that were even more fun and thrilling. And it was just like a drug. And it was an obsession. I remember I would get very frustrated and angry, and I would make sure I knew how to manipulate people and make them jealous so that they'd want me more. And I think I needed people to want me because I hated myself so much. And that was one of the things that just sucked. And it was like, I hurt so many people. Like, people wanted relationships and stuff with me, and they would all, I'm glad I didn't just like jump into tons of relationships, because I would have really messed up a lot of people. It was so much that it never dawned on me how much of this is a problem of me, and that I really need to seek therapy on this. And the most frustrating thing ever is, here I struggle with sex for so long, just constantly needed validation, needed others. And that's what I thought I really needed, was the validation. Until this year, 2025, what was it? August. I had a therapy appointment. No, it's July. I had a therapy appointment. I found out about anxious attachment styles and found out I was anxiously attached. And it made everything make sense. I went after women to emotionally regulate me and to make me feel loved, and I could control the love. And if I didn't feel love from them, I would manipulate them into giving me love, into jealousy, and ensuring that I could be loved by paying for it even. And that was a really big sickness of mine. I didn't realize how much anxious attachment played into my addiction. Because drugs I loved, alcohol I loved, but it didn't give me the other part of love I was looking for. And women did. And I think that's where, when it comes to it, I've always called them like add-ons, where a lot of addicts I've learned, they either go to gambling, which is almost like that risk addiction, chaos addiction, or they go to sex. And that's where I think a lot of addicts who go to the sex side of things are very anxiously attached, or have a really whacked and very bad attachment style. And drugs and alcohol break everything down in us so much that we're at that very basic needs aspect. And we go after that. Like, yes, it feels good, and there's chemsex with the sensory and how it all is. Wow, the other part of it is that we need to just be emotionally regulated. And I would keep all these women in my life. Like, my ex-wife never went through my phone, and she should have. Because, I mean, I had all these different girls on the sides that I was talking to, and it was always about, can I manipulate them into giving me sex? And if I could, it meant that I was wanted so much more. And it gave me the self-validation that I was looking for in everybody else that I could not find in myself, and the hatred and resentment that I would put towards my ex-wife. And it just goes to show how toxic of a person I was. I mean, that's the worst part about addiction is, like, when I got sober, it was so easy to tell my ex-wife about cocaine addiction. It was easy to tell her about alcohol addiction. I literally originally told her alcohol, then I talked about cocaine, and I never really went into the sex. I was so ashamed and embarrassed about the sex, and I didn't want her to leave because it was such a fear, my fear of being alone, that I never told her that, I had a really long ongoing affair with her cousin. I had an ongoing affair with a friend of hers. I had ongoing affair with a couple of the saleswomen I worked with. I had an ongoing affair with a few other people. Like, I just never told her any of that, and I never wanted to because I was so ashamed of it, and I was so afraid. It wasn't even that I was ashamed. I was so selfish that I was afraid she would leave me because I knew I deserved to be left, and I was so afraid of being alone, especially when I got sober because I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know life. And I would probably be something I'll share on a lot more. I'm kind of curious of what people's experience is with this. Because I think this is something that a lot of people do struggle with. And we don't share about it enough. And it's not to normalize it. It's to get that conversation going. And like looking back at it, if I would have had the strength in me to tell my ex-wife, like, hey, we need to separate. I've been having a lot of affairs on you. I need to leave. I am the problem right now. And handling it more logical and as like an adult, allowing her to go through her emotions. Do we go to therapy or not? Do we get a divorce? Whatever it might be. But I didn't. I took the coward's way out. And she eventually found out because the receptionist messaged her. And I mean, that's why I share, though. I share because maybe it opens people's eyes up and they want to change. Because I think it's worth it too. But it's not easy at all. It sucks. It really does suck. And if you're trying to get sober, just find what works for you. You got rehab, inpatient treatment, outpatient treatment. Go to Refine Recovery. They're amazing. If you're struggling with even sex addiction, download Sunflower Sober. They're always down below, sunflowersober.com, 24-hour support, community, tools, and resources. Going to different meetings, even Sex Anonymous. I mean, find what works and don't give up. And when we get sober, man, it's amazing how life starts to hit you. And like all the regrets I have looking back of if I would have did things differently and right, how much further ahead I would be. And that's an amazing thing to think. And I guess that's why I also share and I'm very real about it as I can be, because I don't want people to make the same mistake I did. So for anybody going through it, man, I know. And it sucks.